So let me set a scene for you. It's specifically the 15th of June 2021, and you, perhaps like me, were in your car on a much-needed lunch break. This just happened to run alongside the newest Nintendo Direct. At this point, you've been hoping beyond hope that some kind of news regarding Metroid Prime 4 would be in this Direct. It's been roughly 4 years since the initial announcement and development of that game, and that's still pretty hype for you. Just the idea of another Metroid game is enough. We were fortunate enough to get the remake of Metroid 2 not that long ago, Samus Returns. It was a fun time, and if nothing else, it sparked interest in the series again, which is why the Prime 4 announcement was such a huge deal. The Direct opens up on Smash Brothers, because, well, of course it does. Still a pretty fun announcement for Smash, I won't lie. I wasn't ever expecting Tekken to make an appearance, but hey, that's cool. And there was some other stuff, Mario Party trailer, things looking pretty bare bones for the Nintendo Direct. It's hitting all the staples one would expect and really not touching anything else. Then, surprise! Takahashi, the main host for these Directs, out of nowhere starts talking about Metroid Prime 4. Yes! No, never mind. Wait, something new? The whiplash was insane. Excitement followed by disappointment, all wrapped up with even more excitement. I was ready to call it. My lunch break was nearing its end, and my next job was already on deck. But I can spare a few more minutes for a new Metroid. What a trailer that was. Starting off with a fresh new look for Samus, a timeline confirmed with the title Metroid 5. Now making this the last game in the timeline. And then, title drop, Metroid Dread. Up until that very moment, Dread was nothing but a rumor. It was hinted at very briefly in Prime 3, back when that game was still new. Just a random computer scan that you can find. That had nothing to do with what Dread is now. I don't think it had anything to do with Dread back then really either. I think it was just a fun Easter egg. None of that matters now though. Dread is coming. Almost 20 years later, and a proper sequel is finally here. I just about lost it in the car, and collectively, from what I had seen online after getting home that day, so too did just about every Metroid fan. Better yet, unlike Prime 4, we wouldn't have to wait very long at all to play it. It was due to release in just a few months' time, the 8th of October, 2021. That's right. Just under 3 months' time, a brand new Metroid would be in our hands. It was a great day for everyone. No pressure or anything, but this game had to be great. It needed to be one of, if not the best Metroid game it could be. It had to revive the franchise from its long, dormant sleep. How's it going, everyone? My name is Leon, and I want to welcome you all back to the Metroid retrospective. Okay, look, buckle up for this one. It is a long development. I'm talking 20 years long. Right? You good? You get a snack or a drink or something? If not, I mean, why not? You saw the time code for the length of this video. I'm trying to keep it short and sweet, but there's just too much to go over. Hey, while you're shifting around, why not, hit that sub button down there, huh? Maybe do some of the YouTube things? Like, share, all that goodness? Okay, alright, enough stalling. Right? Being that this is a direct sequel to Fusion, it should come as no surprise that it was meant to be worked on basically right after Fusion was out in the wild. The first real attempt at making Dread was reported to have happened around 2005. This is when the original gray DS was kind of in its heyday. Sakamoto was looking to lean more into a stealth action game, but not so far into it that the game became, borderline horror. He wanted it to have fear-based gameplay. Allegedly, there was a demo of that prototype for Dread for the DS, but that's probably buried so deep somewhere in Nintendo that it will never see the light of day. More time passes. Dread makes another appearance in Nintendo Power and websites around the 2008 time mark. In 2007, Prime 3 had that scannable file talking about Dread in passing, and really, that was kind of it. The next time that Dread got any kind of talking point was around 2010, when Sakamoto said that if they were going to return to Dread, they would have to start from scratch. A lot of speculation at the time seemed to think that Other M had an impact on Metroid as a whole, and while Nintendo wouldn't really ever say that out loud, I think we can all agree that Other M didn't exactly do Samus or Metroid any favors when it comes to public eyes and public opinion. For all intents and purposes, Metroid was dead in the water. Samus was seemingly doomed to be a guest star in Smash Bros. And Easter eggs in Donkey Kong games. Then, 2017 happened. Samus Returns came out of nowhere. It brought a spark of life to Metroid. Then, shortly after that, was the Prime 4 announcement. Things were looking good, but just as quickly as it arrived, it was gone. Samus came and went until June 15th, 2021, when the trailer for Dread was more or less shadow dropped on all of us. Mercury's team and Sakamoto, after Samus Returns, got to work. The time was right, and Dread was made from scratch. There's actually a short, roughly 6-minute long vidoc with Sakamoto talking about how some aspects of the development, it's pretty good. I'll leave a link to it in the description down there if you feel like checking it out. Always good to hear from the developers of your favorite games, if you got the time for it. Oh boy, gameplay. Good Lord, gameplay. There is a large amount to go over here. While the main core of how one plays a Metroid title is roughly the same as it has always been, go to a place, get a thing, go to another place, get more things, then kind of just zig and zag until you get as much as possible, fight some bosses here and there, and you're good, right? Well, mostly. This game has plenty to offer in that regard, and there has been more added to it to make this game kind of stand out, even among some of its other, contemporaries in the Metroid series. Firstly, Samus controls like a dream. Her movements are quick, snappy, very reactive. She is fluid. She has such a great weight to her moves and just overall feels very kinetic. Her jumps aren't awkwardly floaty, they don't feel stiff either. You can control your in-air movement and turn on a dime, in the air or on the ground. Samus is also stupid fast. Like, this lady moves at full speed, non-stop. There's no context on the analog stick for her. It's either she's still as can be or moving at Mach 20. The only time she walks is in cutscenes and or when you use the Phantom Cloak. Otherwise, you are trucking everywhere. We have some returning staples of movement here. Wall jumps are easier than ever and only require you to tap jump if you somersault into the wall, and provided that that wall isn't slanted or sloped in any way, you can just jump right off of that. With that, however, comes some limitations. You can't just one wall infinitely up, or at least you're not supposed to be able to do that. There are some ways to make that happen, but it takes a lot of control and ability manipulation. A bit more on that later. Trust. More than likely, unless you're a super pro player and or put in the time to learn that movement tech, you're hopping from one wall to another wall like in Fusion. One jump, one wall. That said, you can bomb jump infinitely, however, and that is super welcome. Much like in Metroid Zero Mission, it's fairly forgiving and you can move at angles. But given how much more movement this game provides, you might not really need that. Samus can wall hang again, no power-up needed. A welcome return from Fusion. New to this game, and Samus in general really, is the slide maneuver. With Samus running around like she does, they decided to add a slide function. This is stupid good. Any small morph ball type hole that you found in earlier titles in the Metroid franchise no longer requires you to stop, morph ball, slip through, and then get back up and run. Now, you can just run up to that wall with a hole in it and slide through. It keeps the movement flowing and doesn't stop you from making progress. If you get to a hole that requires you to morph ball to get through, as it's too long for a slide, once you get the morph ball power up, Samus just slides into being the ball. And that is easily one of my favorite additions to the game as a whole. It makes the movement feel so much more fluid and it adds a lot of flexibility to Samus and her movement. Alright, I'm not sure if you picked up on it, but movement is key in this title. You gotta be at least somewhat capable with the controls and just how Samus moves in this game in general. It is critical. Otherwise, you're gonna have a bad time. Why? Well, let me introduce you to the Emmy. Outside of story reasons, which we'll get into later, the Emmy serve as a sort of secondary antagonist. Unlike in Fusion, where the SAX was more or less the main threat, the Emmy are here, but they play kind of a smaller secondary role in being antagonists. They are still not to be messed with though, much like the SAX was, but for different reasons. They're still trying to kill you, no doubt about that, but after some exploration in each zone, you can confront them to take them out. It's not all that easy, and it requires you to do a lot at once. Each Emmy in each zone has some kind of special ability you can get from them. That said, each one of these Emmy will use that ability to mess you up. I won't spoil it, as there's actually a lot to spoil with them, but know that they, much like a Terminator, will not stop until either they put you down or you put them down. And doing that requires finding the Omega Cannon in each area. At this point, I should say that the Emmy don't just hunt you at all times. They're relegated to specific areas in each zone. So there will be some downtime where you don't need to stress the Emmy. But that said, each zone is pretty tense. For the most part, every Emmy hears where you are, if they're close enough to Samus, and they can hear quite well. Because Samus moves like she's trying to catch Usain Bolt, those running steps are pretty easy to zero in on. Wall jumps are also loud, as is shooting and setting off any kind of trap. Long story short, these things will find you. It's only a matter of time. Should an Emmy catch you, you have exactly 2 shots at escaping. The first is fairly forgiving. You have a parry option that pops up, showcased by a flashing light. The game does a pretty good job about teaching this to you early on, but if you flub it up, you get one more chance. And that second chance is nowhere near as forgiving. In all actuality, the first parry attempt is almost a freebie when compared to the second. That one being frame perfect. Or, at the very least, it has a very tight frame input window. I'd guess if it's not frame perfect, it's a 3-frame input. One right before, and I mean right before the flash itself, and then immediately after that flash. That all happens in the blink of an eye. Alright, side tangent. For those of you that don't know, frame perfect is an incredibly tight window. It's part of the reason why the wall jump in Super Metroid is as tough as it is to master. While that isn't exactly frame perfect, it has a little bit of leeway leading into and after it, but just a bit. In Dread, it's tough to tell on a video like this, but Dread runs more or less at a respectable 60 frames a second. So that means for every second of time that the screen and game are refreshing, all that data that you are being shown and also inputting into the system happens 60 times per second. That's roughly 16.7 milliseconds per frame. And with 60 frames per second, forget it. Do me a favor. Take a minute to pull out your phone and go to the stopwatch. It should look something like 000000. Tap start, then tap stop. If you're quick, you can get somewhere between 000005 and 000007, which is fast. That's really good. You got those gaming fingers. All right, now do that perfectly on 000016. Even if you manage to get it a few times, can you do that every time? Can you do that after the flash of an enemy attack? No. I'll answer that for you. No, you can't do that, and I'll tell you why. It's because, for most people, the average reaction time in milliseconds is roughly 250. If you're exceptional, and I truly mean somewhere in like the 1% of people with near superhuman reaction times, you can cap out at around 160, maybe a little under that. Even if you are that quick, you have to combat the frame perfect input, the lag between the screen and your ability to recognize it, your input into the system registering that input, and all of that has to fit within the frame perfect time limit. Now, there is a hair of leniency, but I am talking a hair. Is it impossible? No. No, it's definitely possible. Is it improbable? Yes. Unless you have the reaction times of both God and anime on your side, you are not hitting that on reaction. But you can try it on a guess, and that's all the second parry is. It's just a guess. It's great when you get that last second save, but you're not going to be getting that every time. While it's good to have those escape options for if and when you get caught, best option overall is to, just not get caught. Which, thankfully, the game gives you some options the deeper you get into it. The first of which is the Phantom Cloak. It hides Samus in an active camo shroud and lets you walk. Now, it does drain energy as you sit in a spot, but it drains faster if you move, and even faster if you shoot. Eventually, the Aeon energy will run dry, and if you still need the cloak, it'll start taking from your health pool. You can drain that all the way down to your last hit point. At that point, it will deactivate. It won't kill you for using it all the way like that, but it's better to just not let it run that deep. When you deactivate the cloak, you can't reactivate it until you replenish the full Aeon bar. To do that, all you have to do is move around for a bit, though that might not be the best option if you're trying to avoid an Emmy, but it's better than... yeah. That's why movement mastery is so important in this game. Other new abilities include the Flash Shift. This is my favorite one and allows for a lot of unique movement when combined with other movement tech. You can even combine this with the Shine Spark to get some crazy things going. The list of things you can do in terms of movement here in Dread is wildly deep, way too deep, and the Flash Shift is just the tip of that iceberg. So much movement potential in combat, and you'll need that with some of the combat encounters in this game. Other returning abilities are the Pulse Scanner. This comes back from Samus Returns and allows you to see some breakable blocks. Fairly good if you can't really find out where you need to go. The Morph Ball Bomb gets some new functionality, the Cross Bomb. It's a neat minor power-up. It doesn't really do a whole lot, but it allows you to plant one bomb and have it detonate in a cross-like pattern. You can ride the wave from it, which is useful, but in a somewhat minimal capacity. Lastly, we have the Spin Boost. It serves as a weird stopgap for jumping. It allows Samus to essentially double jump. It's nice, and it is needed in some areas, but it becomes immediately not useful once you get the space jump a little later on. It kind of feels a little pointless, but, they designed the levels in a way that required that, so that's that. The Shine Spark is back and easier to use than ever. It can be activated by clicking in the left stick. No run button required. I mean, you don't really need a run button in this game anyway. Samus moves plenty fast enough as is. One thing that I like to do with the speed boost is what I call the boost bounce. Some of the Shine Spark puzzles in this game require you to do a lot with the spark. You can do a slide, a boost slide, and the boost bounce. The slide is pretty self-explanatory. You just slide while boosting. Top speed is maintained and lets you slide really far. The bounce, though, stick with me on this. If you boost into a wall and jump and do a wall jump off of that wall, you maintain your boost and Shine Spark. Hence, the boost bounce. That's one of the most fun things you can do with the spark, and it lets you get into some places that you might not think you can get to otherwise. It's also the solution to a handful of Shine Spark puzzles. So, do with that knowledge what you will. Ice missiles return, as do the super missiles, and like in Fusion, they're just one resource, which is great. The beam weapons, however, never quite reach the same heights as in Fusion, but they do get some pretty new, fun functionality. The diffusion beam lets you shoot into walls, not through them, but into them. This gives the beam some strange use cases, especially after you get the wave beam that, does let you shoot through walls. It's like a shotgun blast on wall hit, and really only on a wall hit. It's super strange. It's a cool idea, it's just a little weird. Alright, but forget that. The beams, those are fine. Great option for most encounters. But this is the damage. The storm missile lets you lock onto things and fire volleys of missiles. I think it's about 5 missiles per burst, and you get 5 bursts. So, 25 missiles unloaded in rapid succession. It's one of the best options for bursting down some of the tougher enemies. Oh, and how can I forget the parry? I mentioned this with the Emmy, but you can use this as a melee and offensive as well as defensive tool. The smack does no damage from a standstill, but it does pretty okay damage when you use it while running. Suit upgrades also upgrade the damage and counter time window. When enemies attack, you can just parry and outright wipe them out. If you do that, you get some extra drops from the kill, and the running melee can take out weaker things just outright. You can even parry some of the bosses to get some sick-looking counterattacks and really make short work of them, if done right. This is one of the best inclusions. Makes Samus really feel like she's the space badass we all know her to be. It's super, super fun. And that wraps up some of the new abilities. Samus has plenty of tools in her arsenal. "20-ish years. Yeah, I know there were some other Metroid games that came out between Fusion and Dread. Zero Mission, Prime 2 and 3, Other M, eventually Federation Force. Yeah. Oh, and then finally Samus Return. Now, that seems like a lot, and in some respects it was, but to just give you some context, during that time frame from Other M to Dread, there were 11 Legend of Zelda games that released in the US. Some original titles, and some remakes. There were 10 mainline Mario games, and countless others in terms of spin-offs, remakes, re-releases. One whole new franchise, Splatoon, that got 2 games made in that time frame, with the third immediately after. In terms of games that fare worse than Metroid, we got Star Fox and F-Zero. Those are the only games that Nintendo has done no justice for over the years. I think they deserve another shot. All that to say, Metroid was more or less at the bottom of Nintendo's barrel. In good company, of course, Star Fox and F-Zero, but still more or less the bottom of the barrel, and bottom in terms of games made and sold. That is, until Samus Returns. I'll be getting into that game once I have a good way to get a good recording done, plus it'll be a good reason to replay it. That game, more or less, sparked life back into Metroid as a franchise. It had laid dormant for roughly 6 years after Other M. Sakamoto and Mercury's team paired up to remake Metroid 2, and what a job they did. The remake was extremely well received, so much so that Nintendo was willing to try some other things with the IP. Shortly after that, they decided to start production on Metroid Prime 4. Though, I feel they announced that maybe a bit too soon. It's been, 7 years since they made that announcement? I know the dev team changed and they had to restart, but wow, it's been a while. Alright, getting off track. Anyway, while we were all waiting on news about Prime 4, out of almost nowhere, here comes Dread. The Dread announcement got everybody who was a fan super excited. Releasing in October of 2021, it became the best-selling Metroid game ever. Just under 3 million copies sold in total, with 854,000 of those sold in the first month in the US alone. It's not a very large number in terms of high-profile sales. Hell, Breath of the Wild has sold 29 million in total, and I'm sure that the sequel will sell just as well, and those numbers blow Dread right out of the water. But 3 million is still 3 million, and it brought Metroid back into a spotlight. The overall response for the game is extremely positive. It almost won Game of the Year back in 2021. I mean, awards aren't really everything, but as a fan, it was great to see the game on that kind of platform. It was also extremely awesome to hear the Metroid theme played on stage like that. I get excited for that kind of stuff. I think we can all agree, for the most part, we like to see the things that we like seen and respected by others. This game serves as a pivotal point in the franchise. This game had to be good. It had to be better than good. Luckily for us, it was. It was everything it needed to be, and it pushed the series further to greater heights. Dread does a lot of things right. It gets a lot near perfect, and it gets some things, I won't say wrong, but weird. Some things are weird for sure. In the right and near perfect category, the exploration is great. It's the best part of the game in my opinion. It's not as free as, say, Super, but it does have a lot to see and do. Plus, with how the movement feels in this game, I don't mind running around looking for places I might be able to get Samus into. Some of these things can be sequence broken. Some are intentional, like the Morph Ball bombs and the grapple beam. Others are more advanced and require you to do some crazy control manipulation. The opening area has one such thing. This wall blob, you can more or less pass by it with the right set of moves and get into an area slightly faster than intended. You can skip the whole first Emmy encounter if you do this right. There are other places where you can get things ahead of time and explore certain areas as you please. I would just maybe recommend getting the Various suit first. Much of the item collecting can be done as you find them in the wild. No more endgame cleanup, really. Certain things require specific powers, sure, like the Shine Spark, but many of them can be acquired with just your wits and, maybe a Morph Ball. While we're on the topic of the Shine Spark puzzles, did you like them in Fusion Zero Mission? I hope so, because they're back and they're pretty good actually. There aren't really very many of them, to be honest, which, is fine, but they require you to pull some sick maneuvers. There are a few standout ones to me, the one in Berenia at the very bottom right of the map. This one is somewhat straightforward, and as long as you know how the Shine Spark works, you'll be just fine. This one here in Arteria, though, this one seems straightforward, but it requires you to do a lot in a very short amount of time. You gotta load up a spark, shoot out the wall with missiles, climb in, morph ball out, flash shift over as fast as possible, and then Shine Spark up. This can take a few attempts, but ooh, when you get it, that's good. Lots of stuff in this game really makes you feel like you're mastering what Samus is able to bring to the table, especially when you pull some of that off in boss fights. Those are some of the coolest moments. Kraid and the Experiment Z57 fights in particular have some special ways to win the fight if you've got the skill. I won't get into it here, but much like in Super with Dragon, if you're clever, you can get some quick boss fights in. Really, the spectacle of it all is what makes Dread really stand out against the others in the Metroid series. It's not melodramatic or really over the top, it's just a fun ride the whole way through. That said, there are some strange bits that need to be discussed. Really, one of the biggest complaints about this game in particular is the music. Personally, I think it's fine. It's pretty good, in my opinion. It's not really anything to write home about, but it does the job of, being in the background with maybe a few exceptions. The Emmy zones and the added noises when an Emmy is close is awesome. Definitely adds to the tension of those moments. And the few returning themes from the other games are also great. No argument here. Otherwise, the music just kinda exists. Which, in a Metroid game is a little off, but not all that bad, really. Again, I don't mind it as much as everybody else seems to. I mean, it's not super catchy or anything, but I think it does a great job of conveying each zone. I like Berenia the most out of all of them. Not really sure if that's a popular choice or not, but that's just my take on it. The next kind of the next kind of complaint is just how front-loaded the game is in terms of dialogue and exposition. Fusion kind of had this issue as well, and it may simply be because the game is way more narrative than most of the others. So it's forgivable in that regard, but it does come off as a bit heavy-handed in the beginning. After about an hour or so, depending on how fast you blitz through the game, all the huge narrative chunks are pretty much gone, and it's more of a straightforward Metroid action game from there. Save for a few scenes, but those are pretty cool and they move the plot along, so it's all good. The comm rooms are where the complaint more or less stems from. All in all, not bad for a game that no one really saw coming. It had almost 20 years worth of will they, won't they kind of build up. So it really could have been infinitely worse. Honestly, I'd say we got a pretty solid game out of that many people will, love for hopefully a lot of years to come. Alright, story time. Finally. If you don't want to be spoiled for this game, check the timestamp on screen here and move on down to the description down below for that time code and go ahead and skip ahead. Gonna give you all a little bit to do that. Hey, if you're new here and you like this, you want to see maybe some more of that, I'm gonna put up a card in the top corner over there, and that'll bring you all to the other Metroid games in this retrospective I've done so far. Go ahead and put that right there. Yeah. Okay, everybody good? Awesome. Here we go. Some time has passed since Fusion, and here we catch a glimpse of Samus with her new power suit look. Gotta say, this whole new white and red look, pretty great. Add in the suit upgrade colors, and it's one of the cleanest designs Samus has had. Anyway, the game catches you up a little bit on Samus's history up to this point. That's right, you don't necessarily have to have played all the other Metroid games to enjoy this one. The game does a pretty good job of setting you up ready to go. Planet ZDR has had some strange X-related activity. Being that Samus is the only thing in the known universe that can handle the X, she gets told about this planet and the problem therein. The Federation tried to send some near-invincible robots, the Extraplanetary Multiform Mobile Identifier, or EMI for short. These are made of some pretty tough stuff and honestly can't be harmed by normal means. Being robots, they can't get infected by the X either. It made sense to send those in, but for some reason, after a short amount of time, they lost contact. Samus takes on the mission, armed with her ship, Adam, and her wits. She dives into ZDR. Right away, things go from bad to worse for Samus. Adam, after briefing Samus, asks her, "Any objections, lady?" Bit of reassurance for her, as she gets deeper into the planet. She loses contact with Adam, as she was being asked to find communication rooms if possible. Basically, right off the rip, she faces off against the Chozo warrior. This guy is huge. He towers over Samus, and she's 6'3". This guy is easily 12 feet, if not more. Samus puts up a pretty good fight, but this guy just bodies her. Something happened. Samus wakes up on the ground. No power-ups to speak of, and her suit is downgraded to its basic form. But hey, it's blue now, so that's kinda cool. While getting a lay of the land, Samus enters a series of rooms that don't really match up with the caves and stuff she was just in. It's more clean, sterile even. A huge robot walks up on her, grabs her. Breaking free, you run and you jump up onto a ledge. Looks like this one is damaged and can't climb. How did it get damaged? The Emmy are supposed to be near indestructible. That's weird. Samus enters a room with a mother brain? No, that's not quite right. It's too small, but it's definitely that same kind of tech. After touching it, Samus gets a beam upgrade, the Omega Cannon. Charge up and shoot. Maybe the Emmy can get destroyed with this? Now see if you can do that. Give it a shot. That seems to work. Just like that, the Omega Cannon leaves. But so does the Emmy. Getting to a communications station, you open up a link with Adam, and some things start to be explained. Samus, deep in ZDR, she needs to try and get to the surface as fast as possible. Adam does warn you, though, to stay clear of the Emmy to the best of your ability. And while you're doing that, he's going to try and dig up information on who attacked you. Room after room, escape after escape. Eventually, When you find another comms room, Adam tells you that the Chozo who attacked you is part of the Makan tribe. Strange that Adam was able to get all of that, but, maybe the Federation was keeping some tabs on the Chozo. The motives are still somewhat unknown, but he says he'll keep finding out what he can. After doing some exploring all over ZDR and collecting some new power-ups, and a few Omega cannons, destroying just a couple Emio you come across, you end up finding Kraid? Now you see, that's weird. How'd Kraid get here? Okay, now at this point, I kind of deviated off the regular path. If you make some risky jumps, you can get some items early, most notably the Morph Ball bombs and the Grapple Beam. You can also grab this. It says unknown item, but I think we all know what that is. Now, once you fight Kraid, you'll see that it's still Kraid. Still tosses nails at you and spits fireballs. Alright, that's kind of new. The fight goes about how you expect, with one small twist. If you get the bombs early, you can do this and launch yourself into Kraid's spike hole. Plant some bombs in there and the fight is pretty much over. Otherwise, you got a pretty standard Kraid fight. Side note, if at all possible, I'll be doing the cool boss kills in the footage. You're welcome. After doing a good amount of exploring, you'll eventually stumble across a place called Ferenia. After a near-death experience with a purple enemy, you're gonna meet this guy. This Chozo just walks out and meets with Samus. He explains that his name is Quiet Robe, part of the Thoha tribe of Chozo. The same as Old Bird and Grey Voice from Samus' time spent on Zebes. The Thoha are the only tribe able to control Metroids, and Raven Beak wanted to have Metroids under his command. So, basically, he executed the whole Thoha tribe with the exception of Quiet Robe. Thoha tried to make it so that any Metroid would go berserk and attack any Makan tribe members that tried to take them over. None of that matters though, because Samus eventually cleared SR-388 of all the Metroids. Raven Beak's plans went with them. Until, that is, he found out that Samus has Metroid DNA in her. The Emmy, under his control, are trying to extract that DNA from her. He knew the only way to get Samus was to set a trap. Lure her in with something only she could handle. The X. Samus, after being told all that, says the only line she has in the game, for the most part, and in Chozo. Firstly, when the theme kicks on, that is fantastic. The fact that Samus has a spoken line is also great. The delivery is perfect. The fact that she does it in Chozo, I love that detail. It could have been so much easier to just do it in English and call it good, but no, they went that extra mile to make it as awesome as possible, and it is worth it. Shortly after this back and forth, Quiet Robe gets assassinated, right in front of Samus. Before that, though, he opened a path in Berenia, and it's time to go there. At this point, the Emmy are offline. You can even see them in the background at some spots. Looks like you don't really have to worry about them much anymore. After you clear the way in Berenia, you wind up in Gavaran. Gavaran? This place is, this is a fairly nice area. Lots of green and flying whales. Eventually you find a tram and it takes you to a place called Elune. Unlike everywhere else, this place is fairly small. It's a little strange, especially after you pull up and the security system just kind of lets you in. This area doesn't look so good. Like a small war broke out here. And for the most part, it did. The X are on ZDR. They're here in Elune. As you make your way through the environment, you get little snippets of the story, ending in an encounter with an X in the shape of a Chozo warrior. Now, this is a fun fight for sure, over just as quick as it started, really. With nowhere else to go, Samus leaves the area only to find that the X have escaped. The whole planet is now X. Raven Beak played you, got you to unleash the X. Now everything is even more violent and ready to take out the only Metroid left, including Quiet Robe. The Emmy are back online now too. Things went from bad to worse real fast. It's at this point that everything that you kill, instead of dropping items, drops X parasites to collect. It's a great change. It's a nice small detail. Even the bosses have a core X like they did in Fusion. It's a fantastic touch to the storytelling of the world and the game. After taking out a few more junior brains, calling these things junior brains, and Emmy, you get to one of the last areas. Adam has been even more quiet and has even tossed in some strange dialogue to try and keep you from engaging with Ravenbeak.
You are faced with overwhelming power. Accept your helplessness.
It makes sense that Adam would be worried for your well-being, but it's odd. In Hanubia, The scene plays out where Samus tries to lunge at a creature with a glowing hand. Stopping short, Samus questions why she tried to do that. The camera pulls back and Ravenbeak has been watching her. He's probably been watching the whole time she's been on ZDR. This is a Mockin world after all. Shaking off that strange urge she felt, Samus pushes on. Powerbomb goes off and leaves Samus pretty weak. The last Emmy arrives and pins Samus to the ground. At the last second, she grabs the Emmy and starts to drain it, the junior brain, and really the whole area of its energy. It's finally happened. Samus has become a Metroid, and with a touch, she can drain anything she wants. Maybe this is what she needed to confront Ravenbeak. Adam thinks so as well. He kept saying he needed something more. After speaking with Adam, he informs you of a ship that's been hanging up in the atmosphere. It's time to go. Taking a reverse drop pod, or whatever this is, it's definitely not an elevator, you get to the ship. It's a pretty straight shot from here. You go up one more elevator and you end up in a comms room? That's weird. Adam talks and informs you that you're still not enough to put up a fight against Ravenbeak, that you should pack it in and leave. The mission is over. Samus doesn't really like that and fires a shot, revealing that Ravenbeak has been pulling a Master Miller. Adam hasn't been Adam ever since you got into ZDR. It's been Ravenbeak the whole time. He goes on about how Samus has two different types of Chozo DNA in her. The Thoha DNA and Mockin DNA. Specifically, Ravenbeak's. She needed a fighting chance on Zebes as a kid, and while the Thoha are strong, sure, they're not Chozo warrior strong. Looking to put an end to this, the last fight between father and daughter, I guess, takes place. This is possibly the best boss fight in all of Metroid. I talked earlier about the kinetic feeling that this game has with its movement. This is the ultimate pure distillation of that kinetic energy, all in one fight. Ravenbeak does not hold back. Every move hits like a truck, and the fight takes place in 3 parts, like any great boss fight does. The counters hit hard, music is exciting, and the transitions between the stages are on point. This whole game has been clean, but this fight? This fight is so clean. After taking to the skies and getting one wing clipped by Samus, Ravenbeak just rips the other one off, and the battle continues on foot. Eventually, a counter opens up, and Samus goes for the throat. Full Metroid power on display, except she gets caught and held just like she was in the intro. Ravenbeak talks about how he doesn't want the Metroid DNA in her anymore. Hell, he doesn't really even need her alive either. He's just gonna clone an army of Samus, the ultimate Metroid. Her visor goes dark, her arms limp as she is held by the neck. I now present to you, Woman Too Angry to Die. She opens her eyes with all the ferocity she can muster and latches her hand into Ravenbeak's head and begins to drain him, the ship, and by the looks of it, the whole damn sky, all while letting out this guttural, hate-filled scream. She brings the ship down and is now on solid ground again. Ravenbeak can barely stand at this point, and Samus has this sick-looking Metroid suit. NX takes over Ravenbeak, and he transforms into Kraid? Kinda? Raven Kraid? Kraid Beak? Luckily for you, Samus has the Hyper Beam. No longer a single-shot weapon like in Super, this thing is a full-on Kamehameha of destruction. Samus is so over Ravenbeak and the X, she doesn't even try to absorb it. She just melts it. The escape counter is on, and just like every game ending ever, something is about to blow up. Samus rushes back to the ship, and just as she tries to take off, she gets stopped. Adam, the real Adam, says that she will drain the ship if she touches much of anything else. Then, Quiet Robe X shows up. It does the respectful bow of the Chozo, and the X reverts to its chili-like state and flies into Samus, reverting her back and allowing her to pilot the ship. The Thoha tribe controls the Metroids, you see, so by sacrificing itself, it saves Samus. But why did it do that? It has Quiet Robe's memories. Maybe it was looking to help because of that. Maybe it knew the X weren't going to survive, so it did a last act of kindness because of Quiet Robe's influence. Who can say? But it did it, and Samus is able to make her escape. I love Metroid games, I really do, but this is my favorite one. It takes everything super made fun about Metroid, mixes in the story elements that I like from Fusion, and takes the updated controls from Samus Returns, updates them a little further, and adds some buttery smooth movement and gameplay elements. I didn't even really talk about the context animations on Samus in this game. If you run into a wall, she'll put her hand up in front of her, on the wall. Same with her feet, if it's a step or something she can climb into. The amount of polish and care that went into this game is astounding. It really is. If you haven't played it for any reason, you owe it to yourself to try it out. If you're a fan or not, it's an excellent game, and it hangs with the best of the best on the Switch, and honestly in the gaming landscape as a whole. I cannot recommend this game enough. I can only hope that the steam that Metroid has picked up over the past few years continues to move the series forward. But where can it go now? The developer said that Dread marks the end of the Metroid saga of Samus Aran. Where does she go from here? What new stories are waiting to be told? With any luck, we won't be waiting another 20 years to find out. As of now, this marks the end of the Metroid retrospective. For those of you wondering, yes, I will be making a return trip to SR388 to go over Samus Returns. I do have plans to go over the Prime series in the future. For now though, I think there are two possibilities for future retrospectives. I'm thinking of either going with The Legend of Zelda or Castlevania. If you want more Metroidvania action, let me know what you think. Leave a comment and feel free to leave some other suggestions for future retrospectives. I'm down for just about anything. Until then, my name is Leon, and this has been the Metroid Retrospective. See you next mission. Hey there everybody, welcome to the end card. I gotta say, I had a blast making these videos, and it's been super great to get to know some of you all in the comments. I'm actually a little sad writing this up here. This series means a lot to me, and making these videos has been one of the best experiences I've had. It sucks to see it come to an end. I hope, if nothing else, I either helped you relive some fun memories, and or I gave you some reasons to make some new ones. Thank you all for watching. Play games, have fun, and I'll see you later.